The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, Icasa, is holding an urgent media briefing to clarify matters relating to recent media reports involving the regulator and the Minister of Communications, Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. Icasa has given the minister a deadline of 11 a.m. to pay one of 4 installments of 450 million rand of its annual budget. Let's take you there now.
It may interfere with Chapter 9 institutions, including Icasa. In terms of Section 3, Subsection 3 of the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa Act, number 13 of 2000, the authority is independent and subject only to the Constitution and the law, and must be impartial and must perform its function without fear, favor, or prejudice. Further, subsection 4 requires the authority to function without any political interference. Section 15(1) of the Icasa Act states that the authority is financed by money appropriated by Parliament. The Council of the Authority notes with serious concern that Icasa's first tranche payment has been unlawfully withheld by the Department of Communication, even though the National Treasury has already released the budget allocation for the 2019-2020 financial year as approved by Parliament. In addition to the above, tranches are transferred within the first month of each quarter, and to date, the authority has not received its allocation. The authority is of the view that the DOC is not empowered in law to withhold quarterly tranches due to Icasa. The effect of withholding the payment to Icasa has dire consequences to the extent that the authority is unable to perform its mandate of regulating the sector in the public interest. Further, the authority is not in a position to meet its day-to-day operational costs, which is tantamount to an effective total shutdown of the regulator. Section 15A of the Icasa Act provides that the Chief Executive Officer must, at least 3 months before the end of each financial year, prepare and submit to the Council for approval an annual plan that describes the proposed activities of Icasa with indicative timeframes for the coming year. The authority would like to put it on record that the provisions of Section 15A have already been satisfied in that Council approved the annual performance plan. Therefore, it is not within the Minister's power to approve the annual performance plan. In light of this, the authority advises that it has not received any undertaking from the Department of Communication on the release of Icasa's first tranche of the annual allocation of funds. The authority has accordingly instructed its attorneys to file an urgent application to compel the Department of Communications to release the funds on an expedited basis. The statement reads, thank you. We can take questions.
Thank you, Chair. If there's any question, there's the questions in. Yeah, I've noted you, Mr. OPT. Duncan, in that order. Yeah?
Hi, thanks. I'm Communion from my broadband. How long can Icasa keep running without receiving this money? How dire is it? Thanks.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair and the councillors. My name is Neo Mapiti from the SABC.
Yes.
I heard you very well, Dr. Women, when you says the authority is independent and supposed to be working outside the interference of the political power or head. In this case, is the Minister of Communication. One way or the other, you had to sort of like consult, more especially when it comes to budget. Your budget is approved by the Parliament, presented by the Minister. Now, what transpired during your negotiations? I'm talking the year before you came in as acting. What transpired? And what causes the delay for the minister to release the funds, as it seems to be the case? The third one, Dr. Nguyen, is if the funds doesn't show by the end of April, what will be the status of the Icasa in terms of its functions and mandate?
Okay, thank you. Duncan?
Thank you. It's Duncan McLeod from Tech Central. Two questions. What communication have you had with the Minister and the DOC on this matter, and what reasons have they given Icasa for withholding this funding? And secondly, you say you're filing papers with the court to challenge this. Have those papers been filed already, and when do you expect the court to hear this case?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think I can perhaps start with the responses. We'll take a next round if there are any questions. Thanks. There's a question from my broadband. How dire? The situation is dire. I think as one is just right out that if the situation persists, water is busy flowing under the bridge. If the situation persists, we will absolutely be in no position to meet our financial obligations, and that extends to service providers, to salary payments, to meet all other financial commitments we have. This is not a bailout. Okay. We would like to make it very clear that this is not a bailout. Icasa has never failed its duty and role to contribute through the collection of license fees to the national fiscus. On average, every year we contribute about 1.3 billion through the collection of license fees, money of which we don't even keep a cent. We take to the national treasury in fulfillment of our public interest mandate. Now, we are not dealing with a bailout situation here. There was a question from the SABC about what transpired and what causes the delay. There's an issue which we've been, in discussions around some of the aspects contained in our annual performance plan, and part of that seems to relate to the question of 5G and so forth. Now, we have not yet, in a formal setting, engaged each other with the minister to great extent as to what the actual, misunderstandings are around the 5G issue. It would be unfair, the department to then say there's a posture. But what we know is that the funds that are due to Icasa's annual allocation is not released on condition that 1, 2, 3 has happened. I think that's what we need to get clear. There is an allocation, it's a basic allocation that Icasa and all other institutions, public institutions, are due to receive as allocated accordingly by Parliament. So there shouldn't be any conditions of sorts attached to our basic allocation. And then the other question, of course, from the SABC relates to the one of my broadband. If we don't get funds, but we said by end of April. End of April is far. End of April is far. There are debtors and other financial obligations that we need to meet in the immediate. And this is unprecedented. Icasa has never been in this situation before. So we don't even know how to survive in this manner. We always complain, that our budget allocation is insufficient, but we appreciate the fiscal constraints that are out there in the country. But it's now worse if we don't get nothing at all. I think the situation is quite dire, and we want to believe that we will have it resolved urgently. It was not of our intention to just go to the courts. That's not how we want to engage with our stakeholders. But we were left with no option but to follow the route that we have unfortunately followed. There's a question from Mr. Duncan at Tech Central. The first question is, relates to what communication has there been between ourselves and the ministry. I think I've just touched on it, that it's common cause that there are aspects of our annual performance plan that the ministry seems not to be comfortable with, if I can use that word. But I think in as far as the releasing of funds is concerned, that then becomes a side issue, because by law, I've went and stated the law extensively at the beginning. By law, our budget transfers and allocations are not subject to anything other than the amount that the Parliament has agreed upon, and Icasa submitting, showing that indeed there is an annual performance plan which, according to Section 15 of the Icasa Act, should be approved by Council. That has happened. So we really shouldn't be where we are. There's another question from Tech Central about the papers and when will the letter be had. That it's an urgent court application to compel the minister to comply with, as well as the department, to comply with the law and release our funds on an expedited basis. So usually, there can be a question of about 7 days or less, depending on the administrative court processes. So I hope that takes care of the first round of questions.
Any other questions? Noted, yeah? Okay, go ahead.
Just to follow up on Duncan's question regarding what exactly the dispute's about, can you go into a bit more detail about what exactly the ministry doesn't approve of in the APP and that it wants to have removed in exchange for releasing your money? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Now the dispute is around 5G. To say we need to perhaps hold back a bit on the 5G issues. It's quite unclear. That is why I said we have not necessarily had a formal deliberation on what really is at the heart of this concern around 5G. But what I know that we believe is in the public interest we can communicate is that there seems to be some discomfort around the 5G inclusion in our APP communication. I think I can just put it that way. As to the actual details and to what extent, it's something that perhaps we will know as in due course, but it's around that, to be quite honest. And we had then communicated on Friday, we communicated with the minister, requesting that by 11 o'clock today, we receive at least a confirmation of when the funds will be transferred. Because we believe that such an approach would enable some form of discourse between the authority and the department. But that has not happened. We have not received any feedback from the minister and the department in this regard. So that's really where we are. So what I'm saying is it's a separation of issues. Whether there are substantive disagreements or issues of persuasion or debate that needs to take place, I think that's besides the point. What the Council of Icasa is preoccupied with is the release of funds so that Icasa can continue to fulfill its public interest mandate. And it's important that even in our understanding, colleagues from the media, we separate the two. It's just unfortunate that one is now said to be dependent on the other. But the issue here, only one, is the transfer, immediate transfer of the funds that are due to the authority so that we continue with our regulatory mandate in the public interest. And then all these other debates and clarifications and everything can always, because our relationship with the minister is ongoing, it's enshrined in the Act, we never stop to communicate, we are always open. So I think that's the issue. And we are just in this situation because money moves from National Treasury, it moved to the Department of Communication, then the department would then give it to us, quarterly and so forth. If the money had moved from Treasury directly to us, perhaps the only bone of contention would then be the mechanics around 5G or spectrum or all these other concerns that seem to be there. But we don't have a full appreciation or grasp of exactly what the issue could be about. So I think, just to clarify, the biggest issue here is that we are now moving to sitting on overdrafts and whatever, unnecessarily so, because there is nothing from a corporate governance perspective that the executive board of Icasa, which is council, has in any way failed to fulfill or did in an untoward manner that should, necessitate us finding ourselves where we are.
Hans? And Duncan, still want to move from? Yeah.
One last one. Okay.
Want to go first?
No.
No, you go first.
Chair, one concern that I know we keep on hopping on the 5G issue or what the problem is, but one concern that I seem to pick up that, and it was quite widely written about in the media, the eye of Icasa, independent. We've seen over the past years sort of creeping kind of like more involvement or more interference by the Department of, used to be DTPS or DOC. So what's happening isn't when you did your presentation to Parliament, was there no discussion from DOC, from the Minister to highlight what the issue was, and all of a sudden why this kind of like knee-jerk reaction? It doesn't augur very well for what's happening in the whole communications scene.
We can take you, Duncan.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to ask what the APP says exactly about 5G.
Yeah.
Thanks. And I just wanted to confirm the sum of money that's due to you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think I'll be a bit haphazard. You'll forgive me for that, because I'll start with the last question on what exactly does the APP say about 5G. I think the APP is not yet public knowledge, and it will, we know that in all the previous financial years, it will be communicated in due course once all the internal processes are done. But at this juncture, and the advice from people is that it's not. I think there's another bite to it. Colleagues will step in and will clarify. The sum of money, our budget is around 400. Yeah, just around, the annual allocation, say give or take around 450 or so million.
That's for the whole year.
That's for the whole year. So of course we can always divide it by quarters and so forth. But it gives a ballpark, I guess, on what we are talking about. Yeah, I think the one of what it says, the independence of Icasa and so forth. Look, I think, of course, we regulate, a very lucrative combination of sectors, basically. The postal, as you know, telecoms and broadcasting. The space will naturally be contested. I think it's understandable, but we need to confine ourselves to what the law says. We know where policy comes from, and we then know the role and mandate of the regulator. That's basically how we operate. Whether we admit or not that Icasa might be under pressure, the I in Icasa is always perpetually challenged, I think the jury is out. But in as far as we are concerned as council, we confine ourselves to what the Icasa Act says. We took an oath of office solely to comply with the Icasa Act and the Constitution of the Republic. So we will always do what the Act dictates of us. I think in a way that takes care of it. If you want, then of course from a progress point of view, I think that's what will help in as far as spectrum and whatever is concerned. The policy maker is the department, the minister, and as council, we await. I think we gazetted something a month ago, just clarifying that our position in as far as the release of the IMT spectrum is concerned is that we await the policy directive from the minister so that we can consider the policy directive and move forward the process. I think that's where we stand in as far as at least the licensing process is concerned. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Just for clarity, the court application is being filed in the High Court in Pretoria.
Okay, yeah. Advocate Guru, our executive legal, will respond.
Yes, we will be filing them
In the
Pretoria High Court, unless otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, in the absence of any further questions, Chair, we can close.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
All right, so that's Icasa's briefing to the media about the situation that they're currently facing at the moment, saying that they don't understand why payments to them have been withheld by the Department of Communications. They say that this is the law and that the law is now being flouted, and if they're not going to receive these funds or having these funds withheld, what it means is that they cannot fulfill their mandate as this Icasa, and they said that they have by and large fulfilled their end of the bargain, collecting fees in terms of licenses from the relevant bodies, and that they are dependent on government to fulfill their part of the deal. And they said that no conditions really should be attached to their receipt of such. And they said that they've never been in this situation before, and it's unfortunate that they've had to follow this route, take legal routes to try and get these monies released to them by the Department of Communications. We'll continue tracking that story for you, but Icasa holding a public media conference shortly, which has just ended now, to tell us and tell the public their situation, and we'll see that story as it develops. We'll be back right after this.